All right, well, this is Purple Politics today. Today we have Kenneth Bush on. This has been something I've been really excited to talk about. You know, Kenneth is leading a lot of different charges in Rochester, Minnesota. He is an endorsed candidate for House District 25B in Rochester, Minnesota. So, you know, you're someone who I've always wanted to have more communication with because I know that you're fighting for a lot of things. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It's a good day in the U.S. We're moving forward, and I'm really happy to be here talking with you.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be on your show, and I'm grateful to actually have the opportunity to talk with you and talk with some constituents that might not know my point of view on life, because that's what we're talking about. We're just talking about life. You know, just a couple of guys chatting about everyday life, things that are happening in the world.
Right. You know, so now being like a representative, like walking into that territory, looking for that vote in this, when I even say it's a good day in the USA today, that's a difficult statement right now, right? Because
Sure.
there's a lot of tragedy going on. There's a lot of hopelessness. It's also a very scary day because it's a good day for me right now. I'm healthy. I'm excited about future career paths. I hope I can figure it out. But for a lot of people right now, that's not the case. You know, come into the forefront to hopefully be a part of a lot of these conversations of what it looks like leading forward. Like, what are you thinking about as you are running for office during this time period?
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a fantastic question. And I don't know how often representatives have been asked or candidates have been asked how they truly feel about what's going on. A lot of times, you know, we go directly and talk about policy, whether it be education, schools, infrastructure, all these different types of things. But there's a different reality going on now here in 2020. And a lot of folks are optimistic, but then you got the negative ones that continue to say we can't wait till 2020 is over. I beg the difference. I feel that we're in the light of some different times and times that maybe necessarily needed to happen for our communities, our state, and our country to move forward. So I'm looking at life with hope, with positiveness, and knowing that nobody's perfect and we can all do better. If we can understand that, we will get better. You know, as a candidate, when I'm out there talking to folks, they feel as if they feel as if, you know, some as if life is hasn't been fair to them. Others feel like they're thriving like they never have before. And then there's the silent majority that just don't want to be a part of the conversation because they don't want to upset anyone or perhaps even lose their job over conversations that they would have with others, including friends and neighbors. And so I find it difficult that I can go into a neighborhood and I could knock on two different doors or see two different outlooks on the world in the same cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
It's a unique time.
And I think it is important to have that perspective where, you know, I think a lot of people want to walk into conversations and say the facts are the facts in the sense that there's only one reality. But in the US and in even cities like Rochester, there can be two polarized realities, just like you brought up, right across the street from each other. And for us to always try to like lock it down to there's only one reality of living in the US and to what it feels like to be an American, like that is, I think that's a flawed expectation for what it means to be who we are and to be in a free world and to be in a place that is diverse and as beautiful as the city and countries that we live in. So that's a difficult place to now also try to create policy, right? Because I feel like there has to be a lot of different people in your ear saying like, my stuff matters and my stuff matters. And that's an interesting spot. So how do you deal with that as a candidate when you're walking in times like that?
Well, I'll tell you what, that also is a great question and it's a great thought. You know, there is a lot of division going on. And I have to look at, you know, especially from my perspective, being an African-American running for state office in the first in Rochester's history, where we've got, you know, a very highly intelligent community. And we also have a very highly intelligent community in a rural way, 10 miles away from our economic ecosystem here, led by obviously the world-renowned Mayo Clinic.
Yeah.
So you're right. You've got folks that have some different types of perspective. You've got extremely, you know, uneducated and poverty on one end. And just like I said, you've got the high level educated doctor, lawyer, two family household making six figures just a few miles away.
Right.
So there's a major controversy as to equity. What is equitable for all in our community? And that's a major conversation that's being had in Minnesota. You know, you talk about the disparities with education, you talk to the disparities with jobs, you talk to disparities with healthcare, and then you throw COVID-19 on top of that, and then you throw in the culture conversation. Some call it a culture war that's going on in our country and our communities based on, you know, police brutality in some aspects, systemic racism in some aspects. I try to look at life just like I spoke first, with hope, and try to be the bridge that can, you know, the vessel, I could say, that the, you know, that can, you know, be the bridge for both sides, create an avenue where nobody's right, okay? Whether you're left, whether you're right, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. I just happen to be a Republican. I'm a moderate Republican, and so that comes from the heart. And when I say moderate, I'm talking about having empathy and compassion for others and understanding where they're coming from. I think that if we can start there, we're leading down a path of if we all knew better, we would do better. As a candidate, as an African American candidate, I hear, you know, things like Black Lives Matter, knowing in my heart all lives matter. But if I don't agree with that statement of Black Lives Matter, even being an African American, I'm looked at as if I'm not sensitive to the situation, and I'm not in tune with my own race. And that's the problem. We keep looking at life in a racial perspective. And until we can stop doing that, I don't think that we can properly move forward. And this is on both sides of the spectrum. Minorities that look at, you know, other folks as if they're entitled and they're not getting the same type of entitlement. I ultimately say that these come down to family values, and minorities need to know, and I think that most of them do know, that the world that we live in now, folks are feeling guilty based on their race, and I think that that's an unfair way to look at it. I know many minorities that are thriving in our community, that are prominent, that are happy, that really don't want to be a part of that conversation because they're in fear of, you know, not only losing their position in the community, their position at work, their position within their own communities, is what scares them.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of them are church-fearing, God-fearing folks, you know, and they are just confused.
I think it's a weird time to be I call myself a conservative. I don't call myself a Republican, because I don't see enough people in the Republican Party that I can hang my hat on their thoughts more than like 70% of the time.
Sure.
And because I think the Republican Party has really lost the ability to show and then also prove empathy, right? Like, and to be able to enter these conversations where we believe that people should be able to choose what they want to choose in America as like lifestyles and all these different things. And I don't want the government to actually regulate a lot of those things personally. But, but a lot of the things that we the government can't save us from a lot of things either. I think that we are relying on the government to be a deployment of different empathetic arms. And when that really should be something that's been taken up by like community organizations, whether it's a for-profit business or a nonprofit business, local leaders working with mayors and, you know, representatives like yourself to be able to help them, you understand their game plan, and for you to help them open up the doors that they need for those game plans to be readily available to the masses. So I really look at it as like, we need to be there in spaces to step up as us all, like, you know, where 200 million people or however many million people voted for like Hillary Clinton, for example, right? And all of the things that they wanted done in this country, those things can get done even in this country without the government, if you want to just build community organizations to do it yourself. And that's not to say that a government shouldn't be always assistive in it, but I don't think the government should always write the playbook for what we want as a country and as our local communities go. But that's really difficult. And I kind of feel for you walking into that environment, because we do still live in spaces where it's kind of demonizing to even to step out and say like you're a conservative or Republican, and to let alone run for that office. That's a difficult weight to hold.
Yeah, it's heavy. It's heavy. And, you know, here's the thing, right? I think the majority of folks, they want to truly, folks are upset with Democrats and folks are upset with Republicans. That could be a problem, is having two parties. That doesn't give enough choice for folks that think down the middle of the road.
Right.
However, we have to deal with what reality is, just like you said. And I am a Republican, except I'm a Republican that hopefully can be one that shines the light on inequities, on family values, and on empathy and compassion. Just like you said, we are missing the boat on empathy and compassion as conservatives. And how we're doing that is, I think that we may be missing the boat in some aspect of it, because we all know that we have to take care of each one of our own families and grab them by the bootstrap. Now, government itself, big government is never the solution for anyone. Big government does nothing but ultimately, as it gets bigger, it dictates, you know, fees, regulatory issues, taxes. You know, we need to put the power back in the local school boards, local councils, local commissions. And we need to get the larger part of the government, including the state of Minnesota, outside of regulatory means of fees, maybe reducing those opportunities, those powers.
Yeah.
So they're not taking advantage of, and local governments are getting bigger and ultimately feeding the state. We've got to find the middle ground and work together. Right now in Minnesota, our government has done a little bit of overreach.
Okay.
Meaning with the emergency powers. And I'm not going to, you know, say that nobody cares about everybody's health and things like that with COVID. But to have a Walmart open, to have a Costco open and big box stores open, and mom and pop small businesses with less than 2,500 square feet, not be able to be open, was a disservice. And that's where sometimes government can overreach with its own powers.
Right, because you could easily have those places, like, let's say you have to do the mandated 6 feet. Well, people could wait outside of those businesses, and they would be willing to wait outside. I even think that's a little bit of a broad overreach, but to say you have to be closed without any exception, that it's kind of even if you had like, let's say a small little jewelry store, you could have one customer in there at a time.
Sure.
Usually if you had a small little jewelry store in Rochester, Minnesota on a Monday afternoon when you would be open, I'm guessing that you probably wouldn't have more than one customer in there at a time anyway, you know? And if someone else wanted to come up, like they could wait outside briefly and they could walk in. But it's difficult to watch us all have the expectation that one person or just the federal government can save us. So when everyone's like, Donald Trump is ruining America or Donald Trump is saving America, both of those statements are absolutely flawed. Like a president has, 3 or 4 things that they do within their terms, within their probably 4-year period, that does make drastic 10 to 30-year changes of the country. But all of these like turn on the dime issues that we've seen happen quickly, and expecting a president to turn the ship of America on the dime all the time. It's like, come on. Like, now mayors, I think, can do that appropriately. Governors have a better chance of doing that. But I also am a little bit bothered by the leadership, specifically like I've seen in LA, and I've seen it also happen in Minnesota, where it's like these governors and will put on like, oh, we're open today or we're not open today. And it comes down in an order that happens and expects everybody to shift within like a 12-hour period. Right. It's like, come on, we're all just kind of waiting, looming with, is the coffee shop on the street going to be allowed to be open today, or is it not going to be allowed to be open? And for me as a consumer, that's still in a weird way, like disheartening. But for the coffee shop owner, that has to be one of the most traumatic experiences ever.
It's devastating. I've spoken with many small business owners. Some of them aren't going to survive. Some of them aren't going to open back up. And some of them truly, truly left prominent positions that they held at other companies. And they went out on a limb to go out and tackle their American dream. And for that to get shattered is completely unacceptable. I just want to get back to community. Government was really intended to protect its citizens, make sure that we had a fair tax system, and making sure that the most vulnerable of our citizens don't fall to the wayside, right? And some have. However, back when, as I speak with many older folks, more experienced folks than I in life, and they'll tell me the story of their American history, their American dream. And back then, it was the church, it was the next door neighbor, it was the babysitter down the street that you saw, that knew your parents, and it was community taking care of each other. Yeah. And I don't know when it became so addictive to truly have generational dependence on government. I can understand disparities, but to have it be a generational thing is one of the main reasons my candidacy exists. We need change, and we need an example that you can pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And going to the fact of talking about President Trump, President Trump is not a savior. Either was Obama. Okay? They're men that have others advise them, guide them, and help them along the way. And I think that when we are putting all of our eggs in one basket as a country, instead of putting it in the same basket versus separate baskets, we do nothing but divide and we divide each other. And I think that right now we live in a culture where you've got the other side that wants to divide and conquer because they feel as if they've been left out of the American dream. And the sad part about it is some of those folks that feel that way, their parents are the ones that you would consider the upper middle class, liberal elite. And then on another note, you've got folks on the far right side that are hampering and talking bad about immigrants who want nothing but a fair shake.
Right.
And they're taking jobs that the same people who are talking about them won't take. And so you're right. We got to give a little, because right now both sides are wrong. And, we're dealing with a human issue here. And it's ultimately a communication issue, but big government never solves the problem. And absolute power corrupts.
And I think you're right where this is more of a communication issue than anything. Like the media wants to put it in this context that it's a caring issue. It's a heart issue. So for example, with COVID, and wear a mask, don't wear a mask, go outside, don't go outside.
Right.
These are scary statements to make in just even on your own personal Instagram these days. But what I genuinely think is everybody is trying to do the best for their family. Right. And they're try to do the best for what they understand as what reality is happening in their life, their family's life, and in their community's life. So if you look at the map, the statistics will show you that in areas that are most affected by COVID, the acceptance rate of masks are through the roof. They're way more than 80% acceptance rate of people not only accepting, but wearing. Acceptance doesn't even mean wearing. Like, I am one of those people that vaguely accept wearing a mask, but will always wear a mask because LA is so darn affected by this virus. The only reason I say that I'm like vaguely accepting of wearing a mask is the fact that I also know that there's spots in rural Minnesota that don't need a mask on every single time in every place that you go, and certainly don't need to wear it in the car. And so I see rural areas saying, I understand COVID is affecting areas badly, and I understand that it could affect my body. But for me, in my town, it's affecting our economy more than it's affecting our bodies.
Yes.
And in big cities, they're going, it's affecting our bodies more than it's affecting our economies. We'll figure out the economy later. And so both groups, I actually think, are well-intended in this argument. They're both hoping for the best of their family and their community, and they have to attack it on different fronts because COVID has a lot of actually diverse effects to this country. It's affecting our bodies. Too many people are dying, and we don't even know how many companies are dying. I think that CNN should put up the statistic of deaths in America and bankruptcies in America at the same time. Wow. And I think this is the conversation that we should both be having. So if you live in New York and LA, and specifically if you're in like a grocery store, wear a darn mask, do that. But if you're out on the beach, go for a run, I don't think you need to wear it. If you're driving in a truck in northern Minnesota, take that thing off and live life. You know, so,
right on. Yep.
So, and that's the difficulty of this. But even when it comes to the regulation of masks, I think that we live in a country that already has a lot of great rules in place. If Walmart wants to say every customer needs to wear a mask, that customer should walk up to the door and someone says, hey, in Walmart, you need to wear a mask. You need to wear a mask. You have to shut up and do it. That's the company's policy.
Sure.
And you can't then go yell at the government and say, hey, save me with my freedom, government. Walmart can't tell me to wear a mask. It's like, well, no. If you walk in their facility and they have it by their bylaws that even if they just changed them yesterday, that you have to wear a mask in the store, you have to wear one. But I also think there should be able to be little skate shops that go, sorry, this is a non-mask wearing store. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, please do not enter, because we're not wearing a mask as employees, and sorry about it. So, and we have such a conscious environment right now to be able to educate ourselves in different ways. The liberal cities that want everybody to wear a mask, that's already happening. And then these, more like conservative cities that have less population who don't want people to wear a mask, they can just freely go, okay, we're going to rock and roll as we be. So I actually think we have the structure in place to do what we want in America, to live the lives of freedom as we desire and to live communally as needed. And everyone's yelling at each other people from LA are yelling at people from rural Minnesota to like do things and adhere to the life that we need to live here, that they don't need to live over there. So it's so weird that we get caught up into these little constructs, and then we try to make it politically divided. And then now we're always getting caught up as if you're almost like racist if you don't wear a mask. And it's like, whoa, how did we get this far out?
Well, the mask business, it sounds like to me that it is a business.
Okay.
And it's turned into politics. You know, a while back on MSNBC, CNN and Fox and other networks, they basically said that you're a Democrat if you wear a mask, you're a Republican if you don't wear a mask. And I think that that's the most ignorant thing that man can think. And right now man is not thinking properly, because the media has overflooded our households with TV, with tablets, with phones, with video games. We all are really getting embedded in the negativity and the division, and it's not working. And you know what's even weird? When George Floyd got murdered, you didn't hear about COVID-19 for about a week. No one even talked about it. And when folks were out protesting, the majority of folks weren't even wearing a mask. When folks right now that are still protesting, and it's not even about George Floyd's murder anymore, it's just about craziness and taking over cities and overthrowing the government and defunding the police. I don't know where we're going with this as a country. COVID isn't going anywhere anytime soon. You're absolutely right. If someone does not want to go in a business that doesn't require their employees or in their bylaws to wear a mask, that's American freedom. They have a choice to go in or not.
Right.
With the larger corporation or company, if it's in their bylaws, if someone is going to say to the government, hey, you're infringing on my freedom because I cannot go in this certain store, that's absolutely not right, because the proprietor, big or small, that person has a right as well. Do you know what I mean? And but I never thought that the government should be in the business of regulating folks to wear shoes, wear a shirt, or wear a mask.
Yeah.
That's up to the proprietor, and that's up to the individual. That's called freedom. Now, there's a decency law here in the world that we hope that we can naturally all abide by that isn't on the books, you know? And those are the common sense measures that we need to get back to.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it's about. It's about common sense.
And it's difficult, like, even in this, what I find sometimes with the struggle of today is we know that there's so much that needs to be solved. We can both admit that, like, America is a great place. It has a flawed past, and it's going to even have some flaws in its future, but I hope they're better than where it's been. And
sure,
it's on us to make it move forward. And we got to work together through conversations to understand how and why we should move forward the ways that we're going to. And we can do that on local levels. I struggle with individuals when I see them look at a person who is homeless, right? And experiencing a life without a house, and goes, well, where is the government in this? And I agree that there needs to be social systems to be able to help that individual. I agree. And I also hope that there's a lot of different private groups that are also trying to assist that person. But in that particular act that day, if God has shined on your heart that that person is in need, go up to that person, talk to them, figure out what their needs are, work on addressing it. We have to stop believing that there's this thing above us called the government that is going to solve all of our problems. Maybe you're going to go up to God one day and go, remember when I saw that homeless person and I was so pissed at President Trump because he's not doing anything about homelessness? What the fuck was that about? He's going to go, I put that on your heart. Yeah. You were in front of that person that day. Yes. You know what? That day, you could have changed his life forever. He needed $20 that was then going to get him the right juice, the right sandwich, the right shirt to then get him that job that he interviewed for at 1 p.m. But you sat around asking everybody else who was going to help this guy, and I put it on you to help that guy that day. And you missed the point that day. And so I think that this happens a lot of times in all facets of America, right? So while people are marching for rights, for Black and brown people's rights all over America right now, I think it's beautiful. And I've been a part of a lot of those marches. And I think there is a lot of injustices going on in those spaces. I also think there's a lot of injustice going on in homelessness. I think there's a lot of injustices going on in China right now. I think there's probably more slavery in China than we could ever even fathom right now. And we're still paying for that slavery when we're buying products from Nike and Apple. I'm on an Apple computer right now. I still feel hopeless in some of those fights. But what I'm trying to specifically get down to is, I think that we all aren't always supposed to specifically focus on the same thing. And for me to be bothered that you don't care about what I care about is sometimes getting in the way of me actually affecting the cause that I'm supposed to care about. We're supposed to diversify our talents to be able to get to where we're going. So it's positive that I care about homelessness and that you care about what's happening in Rochester, and I live in LA and I'm trying to affect this area, you're trying to affect that area. So for me to like sit here on this phone call and be like, but Kenneth, why don't you care about the injustice that's happening down the block from me in LA? It's like, because you have so much in front of you. So I think sometimes we should stop trying to change everybody's mind about what we're supposed to care about. Start looking towards a group of people that do care about the same things with us, and start to create organizations and make committees to impact those spaces now. And stop always waiting for November to create change, because like that change is actually around us if we put our tools within our mind and our hands and our communities just forward to work towards it. We could change that life tomorrow and not wait till November.
I always ask folks this, what, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
What happens if Donald Trump gets reelected? And then what happens if Biden gets elected? Let's talk 2 weeks after each one of them, let's say Biden gets elected 2 weeks later. Is there going to be a change? And is all of a sudden racism is going to be over now? Or our economy is just going to come back and we're going to be booming again? No, it's going to take some time to get things back to normal. Even if Donald Trump is reelected, when he's reelected, I'm thinking, it's still going to take time to mend what appears to be broken.
Yeah.
We're in a situation where we're no longer going to be allowed to put Band-Aid on things, because society itself, just like you said, you're on an Apple computer, society itself has access to information. But the problem is this. I'm worried about Rochester, Minnesota. You're worried about Los Angeles. Somebody else is worried about New York. The other person's worried about Florida, and the other person's worried about Alabama, right? Group thinking. For me to be upset and have my whole day ruined because of an injustice that I saw in Chicago, when I know that my governor, my city council person, my state rep, my senator can't do anything about that, what's going on in that particular state. The federal government can't necessarily do what's going on in that particular state except for bring in, the guards, so to speak, right? Because most of the power are in the state's hands, or in the hands of governors.
Right.
The issue is when we're group thinking and not thinking at our highest point of view as an individual, and then bringing that contribution to others to have a collaborative wheel, that's power. If I'm thinking on my own and the next person is thinking on his own, and we come together with the same type of energy, that leads to solutions. And that's what we need to get to.
I love that. And that's so important, because you're even going to get confronted by some of those sentiments. And I'm sure you've already heard everything from the right and from the left, right? It's got to, you live in a, I'm sure you live in bizarre conversations all the time, but like, you're going to be fighting for different injustices that are happening racially in Rochester. And people are going to ask you, but what do you think about the black on black violence in Chicago? And it's like, what does that have to do with Rochester? Like that, like, stop always veering from the point. Like, that shouldn't have to do with the healthcare injustice that we're dealing with within black and brown communities, within healthcare systems that is affecting Rochester, right? So it's like, I do think that we try to distract ourselves sometimes too much from the real point on both sides of the line in order to create real change. There's more commonality than we could ever realize right now.
Absolutely. You know, people always ask me, you know, I'm trying to bring folks back down a notch. You know, I'm not running a Washington, D.C. campaign.
Right.
I'm not running for president. I'm not running for Congress. The things that I want to do is focus on our community, our county.
Yeah.
The resources that are available at the state of Minnesota and throughout our region. We need to get back to not thinking about, if every state thought about taking care of their own city, their own town, their own county, their own community, listen, there'd be all boats floating. All boats would float if we just took care of our own. And we seem to compare our apple to the next person's orange. We're not comparing apples to apples.
Yeah.
That commonality, what we're talking about here. We're not figuring out how to best communicate to get there. We're looking at you know, we're looking at the world from an emotional standpoint. I believe in emotional intelligence. You know, it's great to find out a way to read body language of how someone's thinking or feeling, you know, if they're feeling welcoming or they're feeling closed up. But we really need to be honest and open up and open our eyes and realize that nobody cares about what you're doing. They only care about what you're not doing.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? The world's backwards. So good now is bad, and bad is considered good. And so we're you know, as the world turns, it sounds like to me that we've turned upside down.
Yeah, we're a little topsy-turvy right now for sure.
I think that just like you said, people mean well.
Yeah.
And I know in their hearts that they truly mean good. When I go out and I talk to folks, I've not met a bad person yet.
Yeah.
I haven't. People in Minnesota truly are nice and they truly are welcoming.
Yeah.
What happens here in Minnesota is that we all get scared of what we don't know. And Minnesotans generally will be quiet if they feel as if they're going to make someone upset or uncomfortable. And it's not that Minnesotans don't want to communicate. It's just the nature of culture in the Midwest.
Right.
You can't take that quietness for not caring. And I think that folks need to understand the culture first. I do that. I grew up here and I understand the culture.
It's an interesting culture to completely figure out because people want to be nice, but they don't want to confront sometimes the really hard topics, right? But when you do get behind closed doors and people reveal their heart, you go, wow. We are from a beautiful state, and Rochester is a beautiful city. It's
the best.
It's a city that leads the world in medicine, and to be surrounded by the hearts and minds that are doing that on a daily basis is an absolute blessing. So I am so excited for you to have the chance to be able to lead one of these districts in Rochester. It's really exciting to see. I hope to be able to have you on here frequently, Kenneth. You're an awesome guy. I'm really excited about your future and the growth of this conversation. This is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And like I said, you know, I'm running. You know, I don't know everything, but I'm the candidate that's willing to be an enthusiastic listener. I want to learn. I want to be able to feel people's thoughts, questions, and concerns, and I want to be able to help them. I want to be able to bring that person that doesn't feel like they have a voice. I would like to bring that person to the Capitol. When we're talking about issues, well, here's the actual person that's having that experience. That's the kind of representative that I want to be. I think that folks here in Rochester want someone that does not run, we know about racial disparities and things like that. And we know that that's the main topic of the day, that along with COVID. I'm not running on either of those things. I'm running on making sure that my friends, my family, my coworkers, my ex-teachers, people that I grew up with and care about, that gave me opportunities when I wasn't believing in myself. I'm running on behalf of all of those folks and giving them hope, giving them an opportunity to see an example of their work, giving people in Rochester an opportunity to see what our community can be and what our community is about. We're one of the most diverse communities that I've ever seen, based on the international flair of the Mayo Clinic and all the folks that come, live, and visit here. So we're uniquely positioned to actually change the world here in Rochester, Minnesota. And by me having the opportunity to run for state representative and be the endorsed candidate is nothing short of a miracle as far as I'm concerned. And this is why I win, because we prove that everything that you see on Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, about not being able to communicate fairly and equitably and communicating as an American first, I hopefully can show that example as an American citizen first. All the other things, it's just hearsay until we actually are able to communicate and understand who we are as a country.
I love it.
Kenneth,
you're an awesome guy. I'm really excited that you're running in our city for what needs to be done, what needs to change. And
thank you.
You have great points, which we should be listening to our neighbors, our city council people, our school boards, not CNN and CNBC and Fox, in order to figure out what Rochester needs next. And I think that same sentiment can be taken in any city in the country, which is like, let's talk to our neighbors about what the next issue is. And obviously we're going to talk about COVID. And I think it's so vitally important that we talk about Black Lives Matter. There's a lot of change that needs to be done with both of those things. I think it needs to be done timely. I think that it is of high importance. And there's also a lot of things that we can change locally. And those things might even affect our lives more than we could ever imagine, to relieve some of the stress points that are getting us to the point to kind of break loose and feel like our country is so divided. So thank you so much for coming on today. Let's make this more of a regular thing. And thank you. Anything else that you want to tell us before we sign out here?
I just want to say one thing. Black lives do matter. COVID-19 is a very important topic, and they will play a major part in this election. I want the voters to know that I care about both of those issues, but the bigger issue here is finding a way to come together as American citizens and loving our country and loving thy neighbor. If we can get back to loving thy neighbor, I think we'll be okay.
I love it.
Thank you for your time.
You're the man. God bless and Godspeed. This was Purple Politics. I hope to see you all back soon. You had Kenneth Bush on today, and we'll see you all later.
Thank you.